Okay, this is chapter 32 of The Night Singer. 32. The lump of clay looked like a fat old man who couldn't dance, but it kept twirling around and round on the wheel as though it owned the world. Rebecca lifted her foot from the pedal, and the lump of clay came to a halt. She had been working on a fruit bowl for someone from Nora Mokelby. Oh, that's a place. Okay. For someone from Nora Mokelby, but the woman had just called to say she no longer needed it. Joel's name hadn't come up, but Rebecca knew that was the real reason. She wasn't expected to be able to work now that her son was dead. It was true she couldn't. Everything did come out wrong, uneven and lopsided. After the phone call, she had thrown the rough bowl at the wall. The woman had been so happy when she ordered it, telling Rebecca she was going to give it to one of her grandchildren as a wedding gift. But phoning up to cancel the order, she had sounded nervous. Rebecca poked at one of the fat rolls on the lump of clay. It was supposed to be a teacup. She had decided to build up her stocks of those instead. There was a sign advertising her ceramics business down by the road, and both islanders and tourists came to buy from her. The cup sold best, followed closely by bowls and small jugs. Her plates sold pretty well, too. You should have a proper website, Mom. That was what Joel had told her a few weeks earlier, even offering to set one up for her, claiming it wasn't difficult if you worked from a pre-existing design. Template was the word he had used, explaining it to her when she didn't understand. Kind, wonderful Joel. Rebecca grabbed the lump of clay and hurled it across the room. It hit the wall with a damp thud and dropped to the floor, landing not far from the broken fruit bowl. Molly was at Sonia's again. Her grandmother was still keeping her out of school, and while Rebecca was relieved that Molly wouldn't have to listen to people talking about Joel there, she also knew she couldn't stay away from school forever. Sonia had told her what Fanny had done to Molly, and Rebecca felt like driving over there and giving her a good slap, forcing some answers out of her. Had Fanny done anything to Joel? Could she have killed him even? Sonia had said there was nothing to suggest she had, and that they had to let the police do their job. Rebecca knew that she should have Molly back by now. It was pathetic not being able to take care of her, but the girl was also much too clear a reminder of what they had lost. Rebecca had also noticed the way Petrie looked at their daughter, how grateful he was that she was still alive. She felt the same way, of course. It was just that she wanted both her children. Things had been okay between Joel and Petrie, though he had never really been a proper father to him. It was only once Molly was born that Rebecca had finally understood that, realizing Petrie treated Joel with a kind of awkward benevolence, and Molly with genuine warmth. She had brought it up with him, and though he didn't agree with her, he had made an effort to treat them more equally. "But I'm not his father," he had said. "And Sonia's not your real mother," Rebecca had thought, though she hadn't dared say it out loud. She was far too afraid of being left on her own for that. She knew it wasn't a rational fear, but it still paralyzed her. Compared to Axel, Petrie was so much better. Rebecca reached for her phone. She found herself compulsively checking it now, skim-reading the messages she received, trawling online forums and newspapers. She wanted to know what had happened to Joel, but things seemed to be moving so slowly with the police, with Hannah, and they weren't talking to her. Axel's face stared up at her from the Expression homepage. He was sitting in a black leather armchair, probably in his office, because she could see his framed awards in the background, and not a single hair on his head was out of place. His blue eyes were looking straight at the camera. Rebecca's hand began shaking so much she could barely click the link, but the image assaulted her once she did, accompanied by a huge pull quote. The sense of loss is awful. She only managed to read 2 sentences before closing the tab. Anger dragged her up from her chair. She came close to ripping down the shelf of cups from the wall, but managed to restrain herself in time. It would only make things harder for her, not him. Where did he get the fucking nerve? She wanted Axel to suffer, for him to grieve for Joel, but she doubted he meant a single word of the interview. There was a knock on the window, making Rebecca jump. but she relaxed when she saw Ulrika outside waving at her. So she had finally dared come over. Gabriel had been at the rest area in Mockelmosen yesterday, and he had seemed far more upset to see her than she had been to see him. He had actually avoided even looking at her. The man was a coward, a complete fake. None of what he had said to her was true. Right now, Rebecca could only handle seeing his bad sides. She rinsed the clay from her hands and stepped outside. "I'm so sorry," Ulrika told her. She looked like she was on the verge of tears, though her sense of relief that death hadn't struck her family was also tangible. "I should have come as soon as I heard, but I didn't want to bother you." Rebecca nodded but didn't step forward to give Ulrika a hug. She didn't have the energy to smooth over her neighbor's shortcomings. Getting in touch was the very least Ulrika should have done. Her friend paused, at a loss for what to do. She glanced over at her own house. "Elias went in ahead of me, and there's always the worry that—" "Elias is home already?" "Yes, the school called to say we should pick up the kids. The police are there doing some kind of search in the woods." Ulrika's mouth kept moving, but Rebecca had stopped listening the minute she said the word search. Then the police think Joel had been killed outside the school? Ulrika placed a hand on her arm, trying to catch her eye. "I just thought you should know." "Thanks." Rebecca felt like screaming at her to leave, but Ulrika kept talking about how sorry she was that she hadn't come sooner. That what had happened was so awful, that Rebecca only had to say the word if she needed help with anything. "I slept with your husband." For a split second, Rebecca worried she had said it aloud because Ulrika was staring at her, but it was just another thought she hadn't dared share. No, she didn't want to say it. On the whole, Ulrika was a decent person, and she didn't deserve what Rebecca and Gabriel had done to her. How could she have been so dumb and so selfish? The thought that what had happened to Joel was a punishment of some kind flashed through her mind, but she quickly batted it away. "Lina has taken it all so hard," said Ulrika. "She's not eating or sleeping." "Do you think I care?" Rebecca felt like screaming, but instead she made do with a nod. "Gabriel, too," Ulrika continued. Her eyes seemed to bore into Rebecca as though she wanted her to say something about Gabriel. What did she suspect? The sound of a door opening made Ulrika trail off. Elias was standing on the porch shouting to Ulrika that he wanted a cookie. "I have to go," said Ulrika. "You do that." The minute Ulrika had stepped into her house, Rebecca hurried down to the school.